What story do you tell that no one believes until you provide proof? NSW pics inside. Bill Murray crashed a wedding photo shoot my aunt was doing in Atlanta. Just pulled up and walked over to where they were doing pictures. I was born at Johns Hopkins in Maryland in the late 80s. There are a non-surprisingly large amount of babies born there every day, so when they accidentally checked the box that I was a boy, my mom wasn't surprised. She went explained the misprint, they apologized, and just scribbled out the check and put one next to female. My mom assumed that they had made a note of this, but apparently they didn't. A few years ago, my mom got around to ordering copies of me and my sister's birth certificates, since our originals weren't in great shape. When she got mine, it had her name spelled wrong and said I was a man. She called, and they said that they had no record of me being a woman, and that the only way to have it changed was to take me to a doctor, have them sign that I have female genitalia without markings of a surgery, and set up a court date. All of this, of course, at my mother's expense. My mom refused, saying that it was their mistake and that clearly somebody named Samantha at birth had never been a man. They pretty much told her to go blow herself and refused to hear her out. As long as I keep my original birth certificate, I'm fine. The minute I lose it though, I will technically be a natural male and, when I get married next year, have a legal gay marriage. Get married, lose birth certificate, create media shitstorm, cash in via crappy reality show. The American dream can be yours. That I was a 9/11 first responder, not at New York but in DC. It amazes me how many people either forget or never knew that a plane hit the Pentagon. My name is Bruce Wayne Jr., named after my dad. No one ever really believes me. There is an unsurprising amount of comments without pics in this thread. I'll have to scan a photo to prove this, but I have it at my parents' house. And I will come back and scan it if anybody wants to see it. When I was 12 we went on a tour to the Galapagos. The ship stayed out in the deep water while we took small boats into the islands each day. One day, my boat was the first in, and we had a little downtime on the beach anyway before we started to hike inland. So I sat at the shore and engaged in one of my favorite pastimes, building a drip castle. Well, I had dug my quarry for wet sand right at the shoreline, and had started my castle, when a baby sea lion, maybe about 1.5 feet long, came up and plopped himself right in my quarry. My hand was in the quarry at the time, gathering a handful of wet sand, and the sea lion sat right on it. But here's the incredible part. On a whim, I picked up a stick laying nearby and tossed it about 15 feet away. The baby sea lion went after it, fetched it into her mouth, and brought it back to me. I completely believe you, but I have to see those pictures. I mean, come on. That's so freaking epic. I met Flav at Target once. He was there buying a cart full of toys for his son who was turning maybe 4 or 5 at the time. Anyways, I was behind him in line at the checkout while he was flashing his thick wad of cash and jingly jangling his watches and jewelry all over the place with a mouthful of grills. All the employees came and shook his hand when he finished paying, in which my mom said, "Oh look honey, they're being nice to that retarded man." I about died and had to explain to her who he was. She didn't believe me until he got into his limo parked right in front of the no parking zone. If you're wondering if he really acts like he does on TV, he really does. I was in 2nd grade admiring one of my classmates perform the rubber pencil trick a couple desks down from me. I'd never seen it before and was completely amazed by it, so I began imitating the hand movement he was making. A few moments later, the pencil he was rubberizing flew out of his hand, past the students between us and landed in my hand, which was still in motion. It was the perfect double rubber pencil. I had reached the highest point in my life at 2nd grade. It's been all downhill from there. I was born without an butthole. No, really. The year was 1988. It was a time before camera phones. Me and a friend were at Village Square Theater in Florissant, Missouri, which was a dollar cinema at the time. The cinema backed right up to a major highway and had a billboard-sized lighted marquee. I only remember 3 of the 4 movies that were showing that night, the 3 whose titles I combined when I climbed the ladder to the blazing lighted sign. The 3 movies were Die Hard, Gorillas in the Mist, and Cocktail. I combined the three to make Hard Gorilla Dong. This was my finest moment, and in a world before YouTube, it only plays in my memory. Tried to provide proof of story by Google searching Hard Gorilla Dong. This was a mistake. I helped an old lady in a wheelchair cross the street once and it made me late for a job interview. But they did not believe me when I told them, and the only proof I had was the scuff mark on my boot where her wheelchair rolled over it. Edit. Copy pasting this from a reply I made to her hello below to expand on the story since there has been some interest. It took about 20 minutes to get her across the street and everything sorted out. I was 5 minutes late for the interview, so I actually gave myself ample time. However, there is a lot more to the story than I initially said, so I'll expand here. It was her and her elderly husband at a crosswalk on a busy street. She was in an electric wheelchair but it had run out of batteries. They see me approach and ask for my assistance. At first I wonder why the dude can't push it himself, but I don't say anything and instead tell them that I can help. The husband says he's going to go ahead of us so he can get to the car and bring it around to minimize the amount of pushing I have to do. Okay, that's odd. Shouldn't really be too hard, should it? I start to push the chair. It is easily 400 plus lbs and the wheels don't move too well when they are without power and the street we're crossing has a slight incline. Now it all starts to make sense. The old man couldn't push this. I, a virile man in my mid-20s, was having a hard time. Still, it doesn't take too long to cross the street. The real obstacle was getting it over the little lip rampway that leads to the sidewalk. This is where the wheelchair runs over my shoe. Luckily the only semi-nice shoes I had at the time, unemployed for over a year, broke, couldn't afford nice stuff, were my steel-toed boots from my previous job on a manufacturing floor. It dented the boot. Luckily, again, my toes had enough room that they weren't crushed beneath the metal. The whole ordeal took about 5 minutes. The rest of the time, about 15 minutes, was me waiting for her husband to show up with the car. That's due to a ridiculous series of paperwork mishaps. My middle name is M. I successfully cancelled a print job. Destroying your printer doesn't count. Got to talking with a Mexican drug dealer on the street in Mexico, touristy area, so as a white pale tourist, they are very open to asking you what you're looking for. I tell him I'm good but really wanted to hear his side of the whole drug war. He spoke pretty good English from his time in the States. We get to talking and he pours out his entire story, almost starts crying. Basically explains how the cartels run everything, and you're either with them or against them. Told me how he had seen a number of friends get killed when stepping out of line. Continued to reassure me he had never killed anyone himself. Pretty sure he did. Must have said this 20 times. As we were talking he gave me a tour of the area, and we aren't talking tourist area. I was in the back alleys with the locals, met his family, friends, and went up to his favorite view of the city. I have to say I was pretty nervous through the whole ordeal. Easily could have been kidnapped. But I was looking pretty ragged, so hopefully they thought I had no money. He could tell I was spooked and made a very interesting point. Tourists are the only source of money there. If we get hurt then they lose business. This is bad for everyone, so we are actually the safest folks there, minus petty theft. After the tour we grabbed a beer, and I went back to my resort. Oh, and he also shared with me the ultimate cash king for a tourist job. Dolphin swimming. Check a saltwater tank. Go catch a dolphin and you are set for life. Or until the dolphin dies. That my parents worshipped David Icke, and I was raised to believe that I was the descendant of reptoid alien race. I love taking guys I am dating to meet my mother because most people do not believe me when I tell them this. She crazy. I was once interrogated by the Secret Service for 2 hours due to a high school prank gone terribly wrong. Alright, depending on your perspective. Go on. My father used to regularly hospitalize me through beatings up through high school. I guess most people don't believe me because I'm superbly happy. Probably BC school equals away from parents, around people, and that my scars are mostly covered. Don't go chasing waterfalls my butt. I broke my stepfather's driver while hitting golf balls into the woods. The ball hit a tree about 50 yards away and came straight back at me. I ducked and the ball hit the shaft right above the club head. The next swing the head went flying off into the woods. The only good part was a buddy witnessed it. After the second one, that's when you just say frick it and pee off to the clubhouse for a beer. Let me paint you a little picture. I was about 10, and my parents just bought me a brand new pair of rollerblades. I was enthusiastic as a kid, so after a couple of days I was convinced I was a pro. Anyway, to make the long story short, I grabbed the back of a truck who was moving really slow and it started accelerating fairly quickly. I was afraid to let go, so I held on. While at speed of about 35 miles per hour, the part of the truck I was holding onto broke down and I smacked with my entire right side of the body on the road, bounced back in the air, did a couple of flips, smacked again and landed in the grass beside the road. Resume, a minor concussion, second degree burns due to the fact of tremendous amount of friction between my skin and the asphalt, couple of more scratches and that pretty much it. Proof, 2 eyewitnesses and a few scars on my shoulder, my forearm and my knee. Also, thanks for the boobs. For us English aristocrats, I leave you this 35 miles per hour, 280.0 furlongs HR. Pip pip cheerio chaps. My older sister was run over by a car when she was a baby. She even had tire marks on her belly. Somehow by miracle she turned out completely fine. Nobody ever believes me, but my grandma has a video of the news report about it at her house. When I was a junior in high school, I started going to a career technical center, basically a vocational school, for IT. The 2 kids who sat near me and I talked pretty often. One day they made fun of my dad, who passed away when I was 11. Both of them refused to believe me that my dad had passed. I even pulled up his obituary online, via Live. However, since this was years later you couldn't see the entire obituary, they still refused to believe me. They told me you probably just found someone with the same last name, and are making that up. My only thought was, who is really willing to go that far? Every day I would walk and they would bring it up to me asking how my dad was doing that morning, was he late to work etc etc. This went on for a few days until I found a copy of the funeral handout, with the dates, picture of my dad and my name in it. I brought it into school the next day, walked up to the 2 of them, and slammed it on their desk, and walked to my seat without saying a word. Both of them read through it and realized what it was. It was one of the greatest feelings ever when they both looked up to me with this completely mortified apologetic look on their faces. We later became best friends until all 3 of us graduated, were still really good friends and talk regularly even though I've moved away for college. This reminds me of a story I've told on here before. So I was in Vegas with a friend of mine. We are at the MGM Grand waiting for the elevator to take us down into the lobby when it stops and the doors open to reveal none other than Christopher Walken. We enter. He gives us a casual nod, and we shuffle past him to stand in the back of the elevator. My friend and I exchange looks of amazement as we both knew it was him, but we are both too chicken shits to say anything. I could tell he was aware of our communication behind him, but figured he is used to it being a big celebrity and all. We get to the bottom floor, the doors open, Walken takes a couple of steps into the lobby, turns around and says, "You know, they'll never believe you." Read it in Walken voice, it sounds much better, and then just walks away. I just about crapped my pants. Coolest guy ever. Sorry, no proof. Nor, few wouldn't believe bumping into Walken. It's when Bill Murray steals your french fries that no one ever believes. So many stories and so little proof. That I started my period in a shark tank. I don't exactly have proof, but I have a picture of me in the tank and a calendar for my cycle. I knew that I was going to get it around the time that I had scheduled the dive, but a mixture of being hungover and way too excited made me forget all about it. It didn't have any effect on the sharks though. They didn't really give a frick about us being in there. My friend and I got hammered with Jimmy Eat World before their show at my university. We got high with them on their bus later that evening. No pictures, no smartphones. Bummer. Smoked with Mac Miller and then he pocketed my grinder. You have lived a magical moment most men only dream about. Also, I really admire that those ladies aren't overly skinny. They're beautiful and have a healthy non-Hollywood weight. They haven't been airbrushed yet. Sometimes when I tell people about when I chopped my foot open with an axe, they don't believe me, so I can just show them the scar going down my foot and then they believe me. Similarly, I tell people I was bitten by a shark on my knee. They don't believe me until I show them the scar, then they do believe me. I actually got the scar when I crashed my car. Came for the boobs, stayed for the ants. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.